I never thought I'd be scared of my own basement. It's just a normal basement. Concrete walls, a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, and a small window high up near the ceiling that barely lets in any light. I usually go down there to grab old boxes or clean, but one night changed everything. It was a Friday evening, and I was home alone. My parents went out for dinner, and my phone died earlier that day, so I couldn't call or text anyone. I decided to go to the basement to get some old books I had stored in a box. The stairs creaked softly as I walked down. The air smelled damp and cold, like wet stone. The light bulb flickered once, and I felt a chill run down my spine, but I told myself it was just the old wiring. I found the box, pulled it out, and started going through the books. Suddenly, the light went out. The basement was pitch black. I froze. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would burst out of my chest. I reached for my phone in my pocket. No light. Dead. I tried the light switch again. Nothing. Panic started to rise. I decided to go back upstairs. I walked toward the stairs, but the basement door slammed shut behind me with a loud bang. I ran to the door and tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. I pushed, pulled. Nothing. The door was locked, but I never locked it when I went down. I screamed for help, but no one was home. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. My breathing was loud in the silence. I tried to stay calm and checked my pockets for anything to break the lock, but I only had my keys and a lighter. Minutes passed. I sat on the cold concrete floor, leaning against the wall, trying to catch my breath. Then I heard it. Faint breathing. Not mine. It was slow, quiet, and it sounded like it was coming from the corner of the basement, right behind the old water heater. I told myself it was just my imagination or the house settling, but the breathing grew louder. I could hear soft scraping noises, like nails dragging slowly over the floor. I stood up, trying to see in the darkness, but the basement was too dark to make out anything. My skin crawled. I wanted to cry or scream but couldn't. Suddenly, the breathing stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. I pressed my ear against the door, hoping to hear footsteps upstairs, but nothing. Then, a cold touch brushed against my hand. I jerked back, heart racing. I shined the lighter around, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow. Just a dark shape, vanish behind a box. I banged on the door again, screaming until my throat hurt. After what felt like hours, I finally heard footsteps on the stairs. My dad. He'd come home early. He unlocked the door and I ran out, shaking and crying. But even after that night, I can't explain what was in the basement with me. Something was there, and it was watching. Last year, I was on a business trip and had to stay overnight in a small hotel downtown. It wasn't one of those fancy places, just a basic older hotel with creaky floors and peeling wallpaper. I checked in late at night after a long day of meetings and was exhausted. I remember the lobby smelled like stale coffee and cleaning spray. The elevator was slow and made a strange rattling noise. When I reached my floor, the hallway was dimly lit and smelled faintly of damp carpet and something like old cigarettes. I walked down to my room, number 317. The door looked worn, with scratches near the handle. I didn't think much of it. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was small and musty. The carpet was thin and stained, and the wallpaper had some watermarks. The only window looked out onto a brick wall just a few feet away. I dropped my bag on the floor and went straight to the bathroom to wash my face. When I came back, I noticed the door suddenly clicked, like someone locked it behind me. But I hadn't heard anyone else in the hallway. I tried the handle. It wouldn't turn. I pushed it hard, but the door stayed firmly shut. I realized I was locked inside my own hotel room. I thought maybe it was a mistake or the lock was stuck. So I called the front desk from the phone on the bedside table. I waited. No answer. The phone line was dead. I tried my cell phone, but my signal was weak and no calls went through. I was alone and locked in this strange old room. The walls felt like they were closing in. I paced the room, trying to stay calm. The air was thick and smelled like damp plaster and old smoke. I opened the window, but all I could see was that ugly brick wall. It made me feel trapped, like a cage. I went back to the door and started knocking, hoping someone would hear me, but the hallway was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I looked around the room for anything I could use to open the door, a hairpin, a credit card, anything. But all I found was a plastic pen and a small glass ashtray. Neither would work. Time passed. The room grew colder, and the flickering ceiling light made shadows dance on the walls. I started hearing noises, soft tapping, like someone lightly knocking on the walls from the outside. I pressed my ear to the door, but could hear nothing. Suddenly, a slow, rhythmic thumping started from the room next door. It was faint, but it felt deliberate, like a code or a message. It stopped after a minute. I held my breath, listening. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart jumped. I rushed to the door and banged as loudly as I could, yelling for help. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. Then, I heard something worse. The sound of the lock clicking from the outside, locking the door even more securely. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I ran to the window and looked down, but the street was empty and dark. No one was around. I felt completely alone. Hours passed. I tried to sleep, but every noise made me jump. The creaks of the old building, the buzzing of the lights, even my own breathing felt loud in the silence. Then, around 3 a.m., the tapping started again, this time on the window. I froze. I crept over and looked outside. No one was there. Just that brick wall and a few broken pieces of old wood stacked against it. I backed away, my skin prickling. I kept hearing soft scraping noises, like nails dragging slowly over the window frame. I tried to open the window, but it was locked tight. Then, the air suddenly felt cold, like a cold wind brushing through the room even though the window was shut. My breath came out in shaky clouds. I sat down on the bed trying to calm myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, just outside the door, or maybe behind the walls. At dawn, I finally heard the elevator ding. I rushed to the door and started banging again. This time, the door unlocked. Cleaning lady stood there with a worried look on her face. She said the lock sometimes got stuck, but I swear, something felt off. Even now, I wonder who was walking the hallway at night and why the door was locked from the outside. And I still get that tapping sound in my head, like a message I can't understand. I never thought staying late at school could turn into one of the scariest nights of my life. It started as a normal day. I'm a student who likes to stay after class to study quietly in the library. That evening, I was preparing for exams, working alone in one of the empty classrooms. The school was almost empty. Most students had gone home, and the hallways were quiet except for the distant hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of the old building settling. I packed up my things around 7:30 p.m. and headed toward the main exit. That's when I realized something strange. The front doors were locked. I tried pushing and pulling the heavy glass doors, but they wouldn't open. The hallway smelled like wet cement and cleaning chemicals, probably from the janitor's late shift. I looked around for another exit and walked down the hall. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting long shadows on the walls. I checked the side doors, all locked tight. I started to panic a little. My phone had less than 10% battery, and the signal was weak inside the building. I called the school office, but there was no answer. I made my way back toward the classrooms, hoping someone else was still inside. I passed the library, which was dark and silent, the big windows showing the black night outside. I could hear faint noises, maybe the wind or an animal outside, but no people. Suddenly, I heard a soft thump from down the hall. It sounded like someone closing a door. I stopped and listened, but the hallway was empty. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing loudly on the tile floor. The walls seemed to close in, and I could feel cold drafts coming through the cracks near the windows. I found a janitor's closet and tried the door. Locked. I tried a classroom door nearby, also locked. It was like the whole school had been sealed shut. I sat down in the hallway for a moment to catch my breath. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Then I heard it again. Soft, slow footsteps coming from the other end of the hall. I stood up and called out, but no one answered. The footsteps grew louder and closer. My heart pounded. I couldn't see anyone when I turned the corner. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. I was plunged into darkness. I fumbled for my phone and turned on the flashlight app. The beam cut through the black, but the hallway seemed endless. I moved slowly, trying to stay calm. Then, from the shadows, I thought I saw something. A shape, or maybe a person, standing just beyond the reach of my light. I blinked, but it was gone. I started walking faster toward the main office, hoping to find help. The air smelled colder now, like something damp and old. I heard whispering. It was so faint, I almost thought I imagined it, but it seemed to come from behind the walls. Soft voices talking in a language I didn't understand. I tried to ignore it, but the voices grew louder. I came to the old gym, where the echo made the whispering sound like a chant. I froze in the doorway, my skin prickling. Then the lights flickered back on, and the gym was empty. I let out a shaky breath and ran back toward the hall. Suddenly, the door to the gym slammed shut behind me with a loud bang. I whipped around and tried the handle. Locked. Panic hit me hard. I pounded on the door, screaming for help. No one came. I sat down on the cold floor, trying to think. My phone was almost dead. I closed my eyes and tried to calm down, but I kept hearing footsteps and whispers all around. Hours passed. The lights flickered on and off, and every time they went out, I felt like something was closer, watching, waiting. At one point, I heard breathing, low and heavy, right beside me. I shined my flashlight into the shadows, but there was nothing. Whispered, "Who's there?" No answer, just silence. Finally, just before dawn, I heard voices in the hallway. The janitor and a teacher had come looking for me after seeing the doors locked from outside. When they opened the gym door, I ran out without looking back. But even now, when I walk past that school at night, I swear I can hear whispering behind the walls, waiting for someone to get trapped again. I never thought an elevator could become a nightmare. It was late, around 11 p.m., after a long day at work. I was heading home in my apartment building, a pretty ordinary place with creaky floors and a slow elevator that everyone complained about. I pressed the button for the elevator in the lobby, and it arrived with a soft ding. The doors slid open, and I stepped inside. The air inside the elevator smelled faintly of old rubber and cleaning fluid. I pressed the button for my floor, the 10th. The elevator started moving slowly upward with that familiar hum. About halfway up, the elevator jerked suddenly and stopped. The lights flickered a few times and then went completely out, leaving me in total darkness. I froze. My heart started pounding. I pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. The speaker crackled once and went silent. I tried calling my phone, but there was no signal inside the elevator. I was trapped. I took out my phone and used the flashlight. The small light barely cut through the blackness. I could hear the faint creaking of the cables holding the elevator, and the distant hum of the building's generators. The elevator smelled stale and cold. I felt the metal walls vibrating slightly beneath my fingers. I shouted for help, but my voice just echoed back at me. Minutes passed. I leaned against the wall, trying to stay calm. Then I heard something else, a faint tapping coming from the ceiling panel above me. At first, I thought it was just the elevator settling, but the tapping became rhythmic, slow, deliberate. I pressed my flashlight beam up toward the ceiling, but the panel was sealed shut. The tapping stopped suddenly. I tried the emergency button again. This time I heard faint breathing over the speaker. I listened carefully. It wasn't my breathing. It was deeper, heavier, coming from somewhere close. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" Silence. Then, the elevator jolted and the lights flickered back on. I was still stuck, but at least I wasn't in total darkness anymore. I pressed the emergency button again. This time, a voice came through, but it was distorted, like it was coming through a bad radio signal. The voice said, "Help is coming. Stay calm." I waited for what felt like hours, but no one came. The tapping started again, this time from the walls around me. I put my hand against the metal, and the tapping moved with my touch, like something was trying to communicate. My breath became shallow, and I felt a cold draft brush past my neck. I turned quickly, but the elevator was empty. I sat down on the floor, trying to breathe steadily. Suddenly, the elevator shuddered violently. The lights went out again. I heard scratching noises all around me, like nails scraping the walls. I covered my ears and squeezed my eyes shut. When the lights came back on, the door slowly creaked open. I stumbled out, gasping for air. No one was there, just the empty hallway, silent and dimly lit. I ran to my apartment and locked the door behind me. Even now, I don't know what that tapping was, or who's breathing. I heard. Sometimes late at night, when the elevator hums, I swear I can hear it again. A few months ago, I went over to my friend Jake's house to hang out after school. His family had just moved into an older home on the edge of town, the kind with creaky floors and a big basement that smelled like damp wood and old stone. Jake wanted to show me something down there. Some old stuff his dad had found when they were cleaning. I wasn't really excited, but I went anyway. The basement door was at the end of the hallway, hidden behind a heavy wooden door with a rusty handle. When Jake unlocked it and pushed it open, a wave of cold air hit me. The basement smelled like wet earth mixed with something metallic, maybe old pipes. The lights were dim and flickering. The walls were covered in cracked plaster, and the floor was rough concrete. Old furniture and boxes were stacked around, covered with sheets. Jake pulled off a sheet from a big wooden crate in the corner and showed me some old tools and dusty books. As we looked through the stuff, I noticed how quiet it was. No sounds from upstairs, no hum of the heating, just dead silence. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us with a loud bang. I jumped and looked at Jake. He tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. We were locked inside. Jake laughed nervously and said, "Must have caught a draft or something. Let me try the other door." There was another door at the back of the basement. It led outside to the backyard. He walked over, but that door was locked too. I started feeling a cold sweat on my back. We tried calling out for help, but no one answered. The basement was darker than before. The flickering lights had gotten worse, casting strange shadows that seemed to move. I heard faint scratching noises coming from the far corner, like nails scraping on wood. Jake shrugged it off, but I could feel my heart racing. We looked around for anything to open the doors, but everything was nailed shut, or locked tight. The air was thick and damp. I could taste the dust in my mouth. Then, the scratching stopped, replaced by soft tapping on the walls. Slow, like someone was knocking. I shined my phone's flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. I swear I saw a shadow flicker near the stairs, just for a second. Jake didn't see it and told me I was imagining things. We sat down on some old crates, trying to stay calm. Minutes passed. I heard breathing, low and slow, coming from somewhere nearby. I whispered, "Jake, do you hear that?" He nodded, looking pale. The breathing got louder, and suddenly a cold breeze brushed past me, even though no windows were open. I felt a cold hand graze my arm. I snapped my head around, but no one was there. Jake tried to open the basement door. Again, his hands shaking. The tapping started again, faster now, like a frantic knocking. Then, the lights went out completely. In the pitch black, I could hear footsteps, slow and dragging, coming closer. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped right in front of us. I felt something cold and heavy touch my shoulder. I screamed and scrambled up the stairs. The door to the basement flew open, and we ran outside, gasping for air. Jake said his dad must have accidentally locked the doors while fixing something upstairs. But I know what I felt down there wasn't normal. Even now, I can't forget the cold hand on my arm or the sound of those footsteps in the dark. Sometimes, I think something is still locked inside that basement, waiting.